All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to Queen of the Mat. How are you two doing today?
Good.
Good.
It's
I'm
very
happy
nice
it's
out.
warm out.
Me too.
You know
Is that
it's
what you
bad.
just said?
You live in Wisconsin when you're like, it's 30 degrees, it's warm out today.
It's
Yeah.
actually 48.
Oh
What?
no, it's not.
Yeah, at
Oh, my
least by
car.
me.
Yeah, my car did say something like that. Wait, I'm checking right now.
Oh
Where I
yeah,
am, it's
wow.
45.
Oh
And
my
like
gosh.
it feels like spring.
It does.
Mhm.
But then on Sunday it's supposed to be back to 8 degrees.
That's actually so sad. But
I
hey,
don't
like, at
understand.
least we get one nice day.
I know. Enjoy it.
Yeah, go outside, guys. Okay, so we're gonna go over some results from one tournament that I thought was a pretty good tournament. Then we're gonna go into a topic of what we think the best sports for wrestling are, and then I think Brooke has some for what wrestling is a good sport for. And then kind of the main topic today is going to be coming back from an injury. So we have a lot for this podcast, so I'm going to get right into the results. This past weekend, we had the Warrior Cup at Muskego. Lauren, I believe that you went to this tournament. Am I correct?
Yeah,
The Warrior
I was
Cup?
there.
Yeah. Good tournament?
Yeah, it was good. It was a big tournament, lots of girls there.
Oh, yeah. So, I guess one of the main results that I pulled was at 114. I felt like this was kind of one of the most stacked brackets at the tournament. We had Kaylin Whittier. She ended up winning the whole tournament. In the semifinals, she beat Elliot Malloy. And this is actually Elliot's only loss on the season. So Kaylin is currently undefeated at 114. But this weekend in Wausau, I believe she's going to see Taylor Whiting because I know Taylor went up to 114 for this year. So that's going to be a really good match. I'm guessing that will probably be in the finals if they're on different sides of the bracket. So I'm excited to see how that one goes. And then in the finals at this tournament, we had Kaylin Whittier over Megan Schuneman, and that was a 9-2 match. And then at 126, we had Rosemary Triggs, who was number one. I believe she dropped a couple rankings, but she was number one. And then she ended up tech falling Cheris Guerrero. But yeah, and in the semifinals, Cheris pinned Kaylin Hackbarth, which we know she's a pretty good wrestler. So that was also kind of one of the bigger, more stacked brackets, in my opinion. And then we had at 132, Amelia Popolowski. She is actually currently 24-2, which is an amazing record. She pinned her way through the entire tournament, which I feel like is a common theme for Amelia these days, because I believe we were talking about that last week too. She pinned Samantha Weebehouse in the finals. Samantha is of McGuanago, also a very good wrestler, very good person too. And in the semifinals, Samantha pinned Dakota Allen. So Dakota Allen is also a really good wrestler. So I would say like 114, 26, and 32 are probably, the biggest brackets or the most stacked brackets of this tournament. Then we had at 138, Althea Ekdahl. She beat Sydney Turner in the semifinals. And then she ended up beating Leah Lawrence in a 6-5 match in the final. So that one was close. Lauren, did you stay for the finals?
No, I left before the finals.
Dang, I was going to ask how that match was, but that's cool. And then at 145, we had Sydney Andrews versus Charlie Winicky. Andrews ended up winning the match. Sydney is actually currently 23-1, and her only loss was to Chloe LaRue earlier this season. Chloe's also a really good wrestler, obviously, but that match was only 3-2. So I don't know, Sydney's up there. I think that she has the potential to be a state champ this year. So then at 152, we had Isabella Olsen. She won via pin. She's 11-0 on the season. And then we had at 185, Evie Stein took first over Sophia Peterson. I believe Sophia is wrestling for Muskego. She took second. So, yeah, that's all I got for results today. And then I guess going into our first topic about the best sports for wrestling. So what do you guys think is the best sport for wrestlers?
Well, Mateo, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think gymnastics. I mean, I think gymnastics just because you're the way that you're moving your body, different positions, the athleticism. So I think definitely gymnastics. We even use gymnastics as a wrestling warm up. Cartwheels, front handsprings, like forward rolls, all that kind of stuff. So, and the strength that you have to be a gymnast too. So,
yeah, 100%.
I definitely agree with you with gymnastics. And then I don't know, when I was in college, we had a lot of soccer players on our team. So like soccer players made good wrestlers too. I don't know if it's the running up and down the field or the endurance that you have to have for that as well. But like soccer players
A
made
lot of
really
running.
good wrestlers. Yeah.
Mhm.
I used to play soccer before I joined wrestling, and I quit soccer to join wrestling. But I just remember like sprinting, and it was just so tiring. But like my cardio was insane. So like it's I would agree with that one. That was on my list for sure.
Mhm. I've actually like never played soccer. I never did it in school or anything. So I
It was
can't
so fun.
really.
But,
I feel
yeah.
like I would like it. But yes.
Brooke, what position did you play?
I played outside mid.
Let's go. Me too. I played
Yeah.
outside mid in high school too. Yeah.
And
Hey.
I was a little aggressive. I would get a lot of like calls because I would just like ram into the people.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And
But-
outside mid, that is a position where you're constantly running. You're offense and
Yeah.
defense. So
Yeah.
anything midfield, yeah.
I also said swimming.
Oh, that's
I
a
feel
good
like
one.
that's a good like cardio. I don't know. It's easy on the body, joints and stuff like. I mean, I feel like that's just kind of like a good sport in general, but I feel like you can use it for wrestling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. That's actually a good one. Like, I feel like they have good core strength and stamina.
Mhm.
But yeah, going back to the gymnastics thing too, I wrote down the reasons that I thought gymnastics was like good for wrestlers. I think they have good core strength, explosiveness, body position in space, so they know like where to put their body, especially like learning different flips and things like that, and then just the flexibility. But I think the main thing is like they know how to control themselves in space, and so when you teach them a wrestling move, it almost seems like they pick it up very quickly and they're very explosive. We have a couple girls at AWA who were gymnasts, and I feel like they are pretty. They pick up things very quickly. But yes, and I also agree with you, Brooke, on the soccer one. I just feel like the main thing with the soccer is the endurance. I think that they carry over to wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Mattea, I think you mentioned this too, but like track and cross country.
Yes.
When I was in high school, all of our wrestlers ran track and cross country, all of them. Like
Really?
it was, yeah, they all did both. Maybe because our wrestling coach was also the track cross country coach, but like also it was like, oh, you have to run cross country so that you'll be in conditioning shape for wrestling, So
Yeah, that I agree. That was number 2 on my list. And one thing I also like about track and cross country that you don't find in a lot of other sports is you really can push yourself as hard as you want to go. Like if you're running a 5K, it can be easy or hard. Like you can make it as difficult as you want to make it. And so that's why I think the mental toughness from especially cross country carries over into wrestling. And then I also have track, but then I think pole vault can be a good one in track because of the core strength. And okay, I did pole vault. I actually ended up hurting myself doing pole vault.
oh, really?
Oh,
Yes, but I feel as if pole vault is like a full send type of thing.
Yeah.
Did you do
like
pole vault?
mentally.
I pole vaulted, but I'm also laughing because literally all of our pole vaulters were the wrestling team. So like all
Really?
of our pole vaulters also wrestled when I was in high school. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Thing.
What about you, Brooke?
Did I do track?
Did you pole vault or did
So I tried to join track, but then COVID happened. So it just shut it down. And I was like, I guess this is a sign that I just am not meant to run track.
No, I remember we had 1 week of track season and then COVID happened. Yeah.
And
Or not
then yeah, it was literally like a few days because like wrestling season ended. We had like a 1 week break and then it was track and then that was that for me.
Dang.
So
Dang. That's crazy.
funny.
Yeah.
Another one I was thinking too is like, I don't know why, but like I feel like a bunch of softball players are like pretty tough. So like the softball players that come out and join wrestling are usually like pretty tough. So that one maybe too.
They're always like the chippy type of wrestlers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they just like are unusually strong.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a stereotype.
Yeah.
Dang. Okay, wait. With the pole vault thing though, I feel like the full send of the pole vault can almost be good in wrestling too. Because maybe you're not as like afraid to take shots if you're used to having to like go, 10, 15 feet up in the air with a pole. Yeah.
Yeah. That's true. And then like also like, you know, when you're focused on like trying to bend the pole, like trying to like make it fling you, you know? So it's like, oh, yeah,
So crazy.
definitely the full send part of it. But yeah, and it is kind of wild if you think about it, you know, what you're trying to do. So definitely scary.
Yeah. Lauren, were you able to ever like really bend the pole?
I did bend the pole. Yeah, I don't know. I can't really remember how much. I think the highest I had jumped was like 10 foot or 10.6.
That's pretty high, actually.
That's the highest I ever went.
I did not.
Definitely never hit 11. So
that was like state like level 10, 11.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Nice. Yeah, that's pretty good, Lauren. Does anyone else have any others?
I do have one more that I think is controversial, but I would say jiu-jitsu. Because I did jiu-jitsu like my whole life. I started when I was 8 and then I joined wrestling after. And I felt like because I had been on the mats, obviously like in a different way, but I do think it helped, or like jiu-jitsu helped my wrestling because I knew how to like move my body on the mats. I had good like mat awareness, I felt like. And I also was able to pick up the techniques, I feel like, a little bit faster just because I had been used to like training with a person, you know, obviously in a different way, but I don't know.
No, that's a good, bro, because I feel as if when you first started wrestling, you rose to the top very quick. Like, I didn't know who you were, and then all of a sudden you won state, or you took second at, like, the state that we had.
Yeah, I won the state.
Mm-hmm. So, and yeah.
If she remembered that.
Yeah. You remember winning state.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that when you first, what year did you start wrestling, Brooke?
Like the 2019 to 2020.
Oh, wow. Dang.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's like the only thing that I mean, obviously, like if you think about like the moves in jiu-jitsu, it doesn't really help at all. But like I think it's just like the mat awareness. Same thing kind of with like gymnastics or even like pole vaulting. It's just like body awareness. And I feel like that just like helped. So
I did talk to someone. I was talking to someone the other day who did both jiu-jitsu and wrestling, and they wrestled first. And they said they wished that they would have done jiu-jitsu first, which I thought was really interesting. And I was like, why? And they're like, because I would have been so much better of a wrestler if I would have started with jiu-jitsu. And that was what he said. And he said, because of the way that they teach jiu-jitsu, especially in a time where, and like we're at a time right now where with wrestling, like there is a lot of focus on the skill, but he's older than me. And so he had mentioned like he grew up in a time when the focus was like maybe the brutality of wrestling, and it was like more focus on like a lot of conditioning and a lot of just like, you know, beating up the other person, where he said that he wished he would have started with jiu-jitsu because there's a high focus on the technical aspects of it. And he thinks that focusing on the technique would have helped his wrestling more. So
I 100% agree with that. I think that's like one thing we are so like in jiu-jitsu, it's so detailed, and that's why we literally have like an hour block of just like technique and drilling that. And it's like the instructors talking for like quite a long time, but like it's because you need all these details to get the move down. So I felt like in wrestling I was able to pick up those details because I'd been so used to like these really complex like moves, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you kind of learn how to learn and how to pick up things. Yeah. Because when I was at like in college, we did a lot. We didn't do much technique, and it was always very like hard wrestling, which is fine. But like I didn't really know how to like listen to coaches and then apply it. All I knew was just like, let's go hard. So I think that's what jiu-jitsu probably taught you too. Yeah.
I grew up similarly, Matea. So same thing. I was like, what? I need to slow down. Why?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or like just being able to pick things up while listening. Okay, wait, I have one more that it made me think of, Brooke. What yours? Probably like striking or boxing. And I think the only thing with that, the main thing, is like footwork. Because I feel as if boxers have really good footwork.
What about also with that pattern recognition? With the boxing or the pattern recognition, because like we were actually just talking about that today at practice, like being able to recognize patterns in wrestling. And so like that might be a good one if they're transitioning from like boxing or kickboxing over.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And paying attention to your opponent's like little movements and being able to predict it.
Yes.
I agree, Lauren. That's good. Wow.
Yeah, I like that. What about judo? Just for like throws. But like
I think Clarissa Chun and Victoria Anthony both started in judo.
Oh really? I didn't know that.
I don't want to like, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure they both started in jiu-jitsu.
I really don't know.
Sorry, judo.
But I don't know. I'm just thinking it's like another like one of those like you're using another person. I don't know.
And they can do throws that maybe throw wrestlers off.
Yeah.
If we don't know what's coming or understand it really. So it's harder to defend because it's not as like prominent in wrestling.
Yeah, they do a lot more like they're fine being like they're fine with their partner having the underhook because then they're able to like reach over, which is like it like throws me off because there's a few like judo people at my gym that I like train with and I'm like I have the underhook but I also feel kind of like unsafe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you control the other side, you're okay, right? Like cuz then they can't throw you cuz they need the other arm.
Like with your other hand on the inside?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I normally do. Or like I post or just like get out and do something else. But I normally don't do like underhooks on them because I feel like they could just
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's true. That is a good little advantage for judo players. Is that what they call them? Judo fighter?
Judo fighter? Judo
player? I don't even know.
Athlete?
Yeah, judo athlete. Wait, do you guys have any other sports or do you want to go into the injury part?
I mean, I could do the thing for like what I think wrestling is. Yeah, wrestling is good for.
Yes. I'm intrigued to what you have.
Yeah, I had rugby
and
then football.
That's good.
Both of those, I feel like I don't really know much about rugby, but I know like they like do like kind of tackle each other, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I feel like knowing like a blast double or something could help.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and they're aggressive too.
And the hand fight, right? Like and the hand fight.
Yeah, they like
blocking other people, like
Yeah. And then like football, obviously, I mean, all like the football players I felt like always wrestled in high school. At least at my school, they did. So, and I think that's once again like hand fighting and then like takedowns and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's I don't know football super well, but at the gym that I lift at, it was funny. I was like talking with one of the football players and I was teaching him a chop drag. And because it was gonna work for like his position, right? Like a chop drag, and I was like, no, because they like do like off a post. Is that a lineman? Maybe I don't know. I really don't know wrestling or football at all. So, but yeah, I was teaching him a chop drag to go to, and he's like, oh yeah, he's all fired up that it was gonna work or help him and stuff. So it was cool.
Did he ever use it?
I don't know if he ever used it. I'll have to ask him, but
you gotta check in.
I'm pretty sure in the Super Bowl one year, I seen somebody hit a leg lace, like they tackled and then they rolled them, and I was like,
really?
Yes. And I was like, oh,
I've seen a lot of wrestling in football. I feel like you'll see them like do like a body and like throw them like kind of like a mat return type thing. Like I don't know, they just dive for like anything, but I don't know. I feel like it helps.
Brooke, those are good. Yeah, those two. Do you think also it could be reversed with jiu-jitsu also? I think a lot of wrestlers end up doing really good in jiu-jitsu.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think, the takedowns are so helpful to know in jiu-jitsu because nobody does them if they didn't already wrestle. So,
yeah.
That's fair.
Cool.
And aggressive. That's one thing about jiu-jitsu is like people sometimes have a hard time being like mean or aggressive. And I think wrestlers bring that intensity, or maybe not aggressive, but like the intensity the wrestlers bring. And I feel like it sometimes overwhelms like people that like are strictly just doing jiu-jitsu. So I think that's one thing that wrestling definitely would help jiu-jitsu people with. But
Yeah, I've noticed that too in jiu-jitsu gyms because you guys or jiu-jitsu people are more methodical, I think. And yeah,
Which works at times.
Mhm.
But then, like, sometimes you can get overwhelmed if,
Yeah.
like, that person is just go, go, go.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
Brooke, and you can speak to this way more than I can, but like I feel like some of those high level jujitsu fights,
Matches.
yeah, that I watched, some of those like high level people, like they're really intense. Like it's almost like a wrestling match, like with their
Mhm.
intensity, and they're just like, back and forth.
Yeah.
So they kind of both, like, right, like the intensity and the methodical, like kind of a little bit of both.
You gotta use them both.
Yeah.
And you like, that's one thing that's been fun for me to figure out is, like, using like, knowing when to go forward, but then also when to, like, kinda take a step back and, just, like, kind of reassess, like, what's going on.
Yeah.
Um,
They don't fall into a
because
trap.
yeah, because you can't go forward the whole time because they'll do something, like, they'll sweep you, all of a sudden they'll be on your back, something like that. So that's been really fun to play with because I definitely like, coming back, like, wrestling to jujitsu, I definitely, like, was very, like, intense forward motion, and then I would get caught a lot, or I would, like, put myself in bad things, and then my coach was like, "Just take a step back," and, like, I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
But it's been super fun because it just, like, is starting to, like, click more, you know?
Yeah.
But
Brooke, I'm almost doing the same thing, but in like wrestling because I used to really evade, and then now I've been working on more of the hand fight, and sometimes I feel like I just shoot to like maybe out of like pressure and anxiety. I just want to like get the match over with and I shoot. But I've also been working on finding the balance between like evading and hand fighting and then being patient in the hand fight. But I understand because it can be difficult to learn because sometimes I'll go like way this way and then way
yeah,
the other way, trying to like figure out the middle.
yeah. It's
Well,
so fun, though.
that's the same thing with like sparring, right? Like when you first introduce sparring, it's like, when I first started sparring, I'm like, I got two speeds. I got full go or I got drill, and then you start sparring and you start trying to figure out those different levels and like,
Yeah.
the different speeds and I don't know, different opponents that you go with like in jujitsu, like sometimes, um, like when I started doing it, like the pull back, like, oh, I can't just go all 100. You have to pull back a little bit, but you're still kind of moving at a good pace.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it's interesting, the spar aspect of it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, you guys ready to move on to the overcoming injuries or coming back from injuries?
yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like you guys have more experience in this than I do. We were talking earlier about the concussion part, but I think I want to, like start with whatever you guys have for your stories and stuff,
Yeah.
or a point or whatever.
Lucky us, Brooke. We have more experience in this.
Oh, so fun.
Not an area that I would want to have more experience in.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
I would say, just to start off, most important thing is do your physical therapy exercises. And they're boring, but you have to do them. So that would like your doctor and everyone's going to tell you like you got to do these every single day, and it is so boring sometimes, but like that's the only way that I don't know, whatever you may injure, that like I feel like you'll come back the best that you can.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to start with, and I feel like it's one of the most important things, but I don't know if you agree with that, Lauren.
Oh, 1000% agree with that. I
Okay.
feel like, so I tore my ACL when I was in college for a lot of reasons, which we can unpack that later. But like, I tore my ACL and then I rehabbed it, and then came back and I competed again. And I competed and I retore it within a year, with less than a year. I retore it again. So, and that was because of not doing enough physical therapy for multiple reasons. One, the athletic trainer that I was working with, that I was relying on these physical PT exercises for, was overworked. He was a college athletic trainer, and he was in charge of like 6 sports, men's and women's. It was nuts. And so like for him to like be able to give full time to each individual athlete was unheard of, And then for myself, like, I didn't fully understand that, it's up to me to go and to make sure I'm getting these exercises in. It's not for me to go and rely on him putting me through these exercises like a coach does, it's like, okay, I'm going to show you these exercises, and then it's up to you to do them multiple times a day, not just once,
Yeah.
and so that was the reason why I retore my ACL a second time, because I didn't have enough physical therapy. And then and I would say the focus, like, it's not just yes, you have to put the time in for sure, but it's like the emphasis and what you're emphasizing, just like we talked about focus last week, and like what you're focusing on during practice, and like how that makes such a big difference in your wrestling. It's like, what are you focusing on in the physical therapy, and are you focusing on the things that you can get them the optimal like range of motion, the optimal strength, the optimalism, optimal, like the most out of, I don't think that's a word, but like, are you focusing in on these areas so that you can really get the most out of the exercises that you're doing, because I think a lot of people sometimes, like, they'll just run through an exercise just to say that they did it, and they're not really zoning in on the parts that make it specific and that really get the maximum benefit out of it. So
Yeah.
I
agree with everything.
Mattea, you got anything on that?
No, I mean, I agree with you guys. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
have anything on that part.
I guess something else too, with the, like, actually putting in the work with the PT, is like, you can do, like, if you're already injured, you are probably going to have to overemphasize the physical therapy part of it, right? But if you're not injured, injury prevention is a huge thing, right? And how do we do injury prevention? It's your lifts, it's your strength and conditioning, right? And I think the strength and conditioning, when we lift, it shouldn't necessarily be to crush yourself, especially if you're lifting to be strong for a sport like wrestling or jiu-jitsu. Your lifts should not be designed to, like, absolutely crush you. And I think a lot of times in wrestling, that's a misconception, where, like, you go into the weight room and you want to go just as hard in the weight room as you do on the wrestling mat, but what we really have to remember is that what we do in the weight room is designed to keep you healthy for the mat. It's designed to, so the exercises that you're doing should be so that you can go out there and perform. So that's a way that you can incorporate some of those physical therapy exercises, and you should be, like, could be doing, like, strength and mobility. So where you're strengthening and lengthening the muscle at the same time, not at the same time, but like back-to-back exercises. Now here we're strengthening, here we're lengthening, and you're getting that full range of mobility work in there. And so, like, sprinkling some of those mobility exercises along with your physical therapy in with your major lifts. So, like, if you're benching that day, preparing your body to bench, or if you're focusing on doing, like, leg day, preparing your body to do leg day. So, like, getting your working on your glutes, your hamstrings, your hip flexors, like getting those all in positions where they're firing and ready to go, so that you can hit your major lifts.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And I also, because I've done a lot of different, like, workout programs, but I remember in college, like, we did a lot of just, like, very, like, I would I would say more like old school, like, just, like, deadlift, bench, squat, and then, like, little things in there, which those are great, but we didn't do very many mobility things. And I think I now try my best to do mobility and also, like, the strength part of it, and I feel, like, so much better. Like, my body just feels more balanced.
Yeah.
I'm, like, stronger in those weird positions, especially, like, we get in crazy positions in wrestling and in jiu-jitsu where, like, our knees are, like, you have to be able to, like, balance. So working on those mobility things is really, really important, I would say.
Absolutely. The mobility was a huge part for me as well, Brooke. I would say I'm pretty strong. When I competed, probably one of the strongest in my weight class. And, like, I would say that, like, one of my weak areas is that I didn't have any flexibility or mobility, right? Like, I'm so strong, but I could barely move because, like,
Yeah.
I wasn't training that other side of it. So I would totally agree with you that the mobility was totally a game changer once I started doing that, like, not only on the mat, but I also got stronger. When I got more mobile, I got stronger, and it made me more athletic, and, more athletic on the mat too.
Yeah, and, like, when you also focus on, like, the mobility, you're focusing on those like smaller, tiny like muscles, even ligaments, like all of those muscles we don't normally train in those like very like normal lifts. I don't know what you'd call them, like just like the deadlift, squat.
Major lifts and
Maintenance?
like accessory lifts. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you don't train those like I don't know when you're doing like a side lunge, you're like stretching out your whole like inside of your leg and that like kind of like the groin area, which is like important for like wrestling, right? You need to be able to be strong in those positions when like your leg is up or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know. But just like adding in those types of things to your training.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned like feeling more balanced when she started doing mobility. I felt the same way too. Like I was like, oh, my body feels so good. Like I didn't feel like I got crushed,
Yeah.
like other, before I started doing mobility, I would feel like I was like crushed in the weight room. Like I
Yeah.
specifically remember going to training camps and like they would crush us in the weight room. And I'm like, my body's so sore, like trying to go into a wrestling practice. I'm like, it hurts to be in a stance. I don't want to do a forward roll. I specifically
Yeah.
remember doing trap bar deadlift and I'm like, I cannot get in my wrestling stance right now. And like the whole team was like that. So it wasn't like just a me thing. It was like the whole team was like, oh, we trap bar deadlift yesterday. I can't get in a wrestling stance today, which is like the opposite of what we want our strength and conditioning to be doing, right? We
Yeah.
want it to help us. And so like when I started doing the mobility stuff, I felt like the first time I did it, I was like, oh, I feel like I just did yoga. Like I feel my body, like it felt like it just got rehydrated. Like it needed that, So yeah, I definitely agree with the mobility and using, the strength training to help that injury prevention.
For sure. I didn't even write that down, but that's such a good one.
Yeah.
That I agree with.
Brooke, what was your injury in college?
I had 2 injuries, and they were both, in my knees. It was my MCL and LCL.
Did you tear them?
I think it was like a partial tear. I didn't really ever really know. I just did a lot of PT and yeah.
Did you have to so you didn't have surgery? The PT made it able so that you could come back and compete.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of
I've
people. Go ahead.
no. You can go. I don't really remember what I was
I
gonna
think
say.
that's awesome that physical therapy corrected that for you, because I think a lot of people run straight to surgery instead of like
Yeah.
doing what you did and tried the physical therapy so that you can get back on the mat.
Yeah, it definitely like it's doable. They weren't like I don't think they were like really, really terrible. So, but they still were like my knee wasn't able to like straighten and stuff like that. So it was just a lot of like biking and PT to keep it like loose.
Yeah.
And then also one of the things I wrote down like for like coming back from an injury was like I wore a brace and that I don't know if I necessarily needed that, but it definitely helped me with my confidence in that in like my knee or whatever joint you hurt. I think that's one thing that you can use just to like maybe you don't need it, but like it does help you mentally.
I have a conflicting side with that.
You do?
Yes. And
Okay.
so, okay, so on my, so I've had 3 ACL surgeries. They're all 3 on the same knee, all 3 ACL. Yeah, it was wild. So my first surgery, I wore a brace coming back, and my second surgery, I wore a brace coming back. So both my first 2 surgeries, I wore braces, and I wore braces for like a long time, right?
Was
And
it the big ones that you had?
no,
Okay.
not the ankle to hip ones. No.
Okay.
It was like a small,
Just like a sleeve.
sleeve, but it had structure on the outside, so there was metal on both the inside and outside, so the LCL and MCL areas, so there was like metal on those, but it was covered, so I was actually allowed to wrestle with it, which is also wild, because if it comes through that mesh, like there's some metal. Yeah, which that would happen, and I would just have to get a new brace. But anyhow, I wore both of those for a really long time, and it created a crutch. So like there came a point when I didn't need that brace anymore, but I was still wearing it because I didn't have confidence to not have it on anymore. And so it kind of created a crutch for me. And so on my 3rd ACL surgery that I had, the doctor he recommended me not to wear a brace. And he's like, no, you do not need one. Like once I was out of the typical ACL brace, My first 2 doctors put me in another smaller brace, and then the one that I wrestled in. So I was in like a total of 3 braces for my first 2 surgeries. My third surgery, once I was out of the ACL brace, he was like, no. He's like, because you're going to create a crutch and you don't need that. Like, do the physical therapy, like basically like put in the work so that you don't need that. And like he was right, because I wrestled with that brace forever, those first 2 ones. So, I mean, just the conflicting side of it. Yeah. But it worked out for you though.
Yes. I had like just one that like it didn't have metal, but it like wrapped around just for like my outside of my knees.
Okay.
To stay stable.
Did you graduate from it, or do you still wear
it? I did. Okay. I did graduate from it.
What a weird saying.
How did you overcome that? Like being able to like, are you just like, nope, I don't need this anymore, I'm done?
Yeah, it was kind of like, I was like kind of sick of it. Okay. And I was like, I'm just going to try. It definitely felt like really weird at first, but it was at a time where I was able to like take it a little slower. Yeah. And I didn't have to like go like really hard. So I was like, hey, like I don't have my brace on today. Like I just want to kind of try this out, and like but please like don't do anything like very, like just know that I'm like, I don't know. I just like talked to my partner about it. And then like eventually I just built up confidence to not have it. And now I don't even think about it, but.
I think that's also a really interesting thing that you just said. You talk to your partner about your injury. I feel like a lot of jiu-jitsu people do that, because like I feel like whenever I like line up with a jiu-jitsu person, they're always like, hey, do you have any injuries that I need to know about or be aware of? And then I'm always like, no, and like, because I feel like in wrestling, and I just talking to another athlete about this yesterday, but in wrestling they're like, don't let the other person know your weakness, you know what I mean? Like, don't let them know, never let them see you sweat, and it's like, you don't want to tell your partners what you're injured in a lot of times in wrestling, because you think that they're going to use it against you, which sometimes they do,
I mean, so in competition it's different. I'm never going to tell my partner or my like they're not my partner, right?
Yeah.
But like in practice, I don't know.
I don't know. I just feel like the two sides of it, like one, like it is probably helpful to communicate with your partner and let them know what's going on so that they don't like tweak things for you, but I have seen a lot of times in wrestling where like they're afraid to tell their partner, or they don't tell their partner, and then they get mad at them if they do something that irritates it, that's just like normal wrestling, so I don't know.
That's funny.
Yeah. I don't know. I did talk to my partners about it and just let them know. I still sometimes do if I feel like something, but a lot of times it's like I keep that on me. And it's like if I get into a position that like maybe I could, like it would like hurt my injury that I may have, I'm just like, I'll try to like bail almost, or like, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like just like work through it. Like, okay, if this happens, like how would I react, or how do I not like injure myself even more? If it's not super bad, but
I feel like so I also had a labrum. I tore my labrum on my shoulder, and I felt like in a lot of ways it was actually really helpful to my wrestling, because after I tore it, I protected it so hardcore that I would not ever let anyone ever underhook this side. So I'm like, no one's getting an underhook on this side, and an arm bar. I'm like, no way. I don't like, as I was like, I don't want to have that injured again. So I would like defend it super early on. So it made me recognize things a lot sooner, because I was protecting it like hardcore. So like, I was like, no one's ever going to get an arm bar on me or an underhook, because I don't want my arm out here like this. So,
yeah, for sure.
Well, and I was going to bring that up. Did I get an arm bar on that side?
No. Okay. That one didn't count. I forget what we were doing something. Did you start with? I don't know what we were doing.
No, I didn't start with it, because I faked something and then I pulled it back. Remember?
Oh yeah,
you like never getting it.
I think you faked the trap arm and then went arm bar or something like that. You still didn't get the turn though.
Yeah, but I got your arm on the back.
You didn't get it on my back like this. You got it back here.
That's a win for me, Lauren. Honestly.
Oh jeez.
That's funny. I was gonna bring that up, but yeah. Sorry if you guys hear like groaning. That's Max, my dog. He's kind of old. He's
I didn't
I
hear
haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
Oh, really? He's been like groaning a lot, just laying down.
It's actually her stomach. She's
Yeah,
actually
sorry you
hungry.
guys for growling. It's my dog.
Not your stomach. Okay.
I have a question. Okay, what do you guys think about the mental aspect? Because I've had so many wrestlers come to me, they're injured, and then all of a sudden now they're feeling kind of like pieces of crap about themselves. And yeah, so I want to know what you guys have, because I have thoughts on it and like the ways I work through that. But yeah,
Well, we've been talking a lot. Why don't you tell us your thoughts?
Yeah,
Well,
we have
It's been the Brooke and Lauren show over here today.
I'm kind of good just listening. I'm learning from you guys. But yeah, well, I guess I'll just tell, because we were saying I was like had a couple concussions in college, and then I was like, well, this is irrelevant. But now that you guys mentioned it, it's probably important to talk about. So my sophomore year, towards the end of the season, I got concussed with like a knee to my nose, I think it was, and then I like took a couple weeks off. And the thing with that is during the couple weeks, I remember just sitting in my dorm room feeling like such a piece of crap. And I think it was because at that point, so much of my worth was in the sport of wrestling that if I wasn't working out two to three times a day or being on the mat, that I felt like everyone was disappointed in me, that I had no worth. And I don't know if you guys have felt that, but I just felt really like just dark and down on myself in that time. And so I felt so much like that I think I rushed myself back into practice because I was going crazy. I couldn't just sit with myself and be okay taking the time that I needed off. And the thing that's weird about concussions is like you can, since they're in your head, you can be like, oh, I'm fine. But that's because like your head is injured, and it's like you're thinking that you're fine in your own head, which that is injured. Like, it's just not an accurate. It's not like something accurate to go upon. Because I guess if like you injure your knee or your ankle, like you can kind of tell to an extent.
Yeah.
And so, and at that point, like we hadn't told the trainers because it was off season, which I also think was kind of a mistake because I had nothing to go like back on, no tests or anything to be like, hey, you're not at baseline and you're not fine, And so then I kind of went back.
Why didn't you guys tell the trainers, even though it was off season? Well, the trainers weren't in there, or you wanted to have the freedom to compete, or why didn't you guys?
It was because competition was coming up, type of thing.
Dang.
Yeah, it was like a swept under the rug. But yeah, I don't want to, But yeah. So trainers didn't know. I went back into wrestling, and it was because I felt pressure, probably from my own self, and maybe coaches, and U23s were coming up. And so I remember the first time back in the room, I was drilling lightly and it was fine. And then the last takedown we did, I took another shot and it was the same thing, like knee to the nose. And I've never got concussed like any other way. It's always been knee to the nose. It's weird, or something to the nose. Like,
why is it always the last takedown too, or the last?
I don't know.
That's always when stuff happens.
Yeah, it's weird. It is always. It's like, because I remember it was like we should be done, but then no, never mind. Like let's go a little more, type of thing. And then it was always that, Mm-hmm. And then I remember like hitting my nose on her knee and then just like falling. And then I remember like I don't know. Have you guys ever gotten concussed before?
Yeah.
No. Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood, you guys.
Yeah, seriously. And it was like the whole world was like spinning. I'm not trying to like share too much of my story, but I just remember like everything was spinning and it was so loud and like it was just very overwhelming. And I just think back on that, like all of that could have not happened if I just took the time that I needed to take off with that. But the reason that I went back into the room was because I felt that shame for taking time off, because I think so much of my worth was in wrestling. And another thing was during that time, while I was concussed, I was still trying to cut down to weight for U23s, which is like one of the worst things that you can do while concussed is like not have food and water. And I think that's another reason why I kept getting like reconcussed every time I tried to come back, was because I was so dehydrated that there was like no fluid to protect my brain. But all that being said, I think it's like, I think a lot of athletes do feel alone when they're injured, and they feel very like their self-esteem is kind of lowered when they're injured. So yeah, did you guys feel the same way when you were hurt? Like you should just be back on the mat, or were you guys okay taking that time?
I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like being in, or just like a younger athlete, you do put a lot of worth in your sport,
Mhm.
I feel like, and it is, like, really hard to, like, go through, like, your I don't know if you're preparing for a tournament and then all of a sudden you're injured and you're like, "What? Like, what do I do now?" type of
Mhm.
thing. Um, but now when I do get injured, it's more of like a it's hard at first, like, you always kinda wanna, like, go back into that, like, "What do I do?" But it's also like, "Okay, what do I do now to continue to grow in a different way?" Right? 'Cause you'll obviously, like, depending on how serious the injury may be, you can still grow in a different aspect. If it's not like if you can't compete, then okay, you can maybe watch more film or you're given an like, more time to do something else
Yeah.
to maybe, like, help, or you can I don't know, what are the other things?
Visualize.
Yeah, visualize or like, that's how my mind goes now, but I didn't used to do that. Like, I
Mhm.
used to be, like, really, like, "Oh my gosh," like, all of a sudden I, like, felt all my emotions, and I was like, "What is going on?" type thing like that. Um, and I don't
Yes.
really know how I necessarily got through it. It was just kinda like all of a sudden, I was just, like, kind of, like, w going through life, kinda, like, sad, but then, like, you'd get in back into practice and, like, that's kind of how it went. But I think back now, I'm like, "Okay, like, if I were to redo that part, like, maybe I would've, like, focused more on, like, watching film or taking notes or, um, working more on my PT or stuff like that." That
Yeah.
would be, like, my advice for, like, the younger athletes or anyone who does get injured is just try to continue to, kind of just ask, like, "What can I still do to grow?"
I like that, Brooke. And also being like rooted in other things in life
Yeah.
than just wrestling being your entire identity. Because like if wrestling is ripped away from you and you feel like if that's the only thing you have, like of course it's going to be heartbreaking. But just being able to find your worth in other things beyond wrestling was probably like the biggest thing for me.
Yeah,
Where
me too.
and then
Yeah.
also just being able to give yourself grace and understand that like every wrestler is going to be injured at some point in their career, and it's like it's not like there's something wrong with you or that you're wrong for being injured. Yeah, I don't know.
I
Lauren?
think I think you made some really good points, Matea. Like one of them you mentioned, you said, I knew I should be done, but I did another one.
Mm-hmm.
So like I feel like maybe younger athletes don't quite know when they're done with practice, and maybe they're not quite in control of that because like, being in high school, your coach is running practice and you're gonna do, as many reps of what they say, but
Mm-hmm.
like being a senior level athlete, going to camps and like training or running my own practices or, whatever it is, like I could usually feel when I was done. And I was like, yep, I'm done. Like maybe my brain's not processing things anymore. Maybe like maybe I could feel. I got to the point where I could feel like my body like, yeah, that needs to be the last go. My reactions are off. They're whatever it is, and like there will be a time to like push through and make yourself like do more. But a lot of times it's like I could feel when I was like, yeah, practice needs to be done now. And even if there's other one more goes going on around me, it's like no, I'm done. And being okay with walking away from practice because you can feel it in your body. And again, that's like as you mature as an athlete, at the younger stages, you're going to have to kind of go through what the coaches are taking you through and kind of trust their judgment on it. And then another thing with that too is like injuries. um, I feel like a lot of times younger athletes maybe are still learning the differences between coaches say like an owie and an injury. So like knowing if something just like hurt in practice and it was uncomfortable, or if you're actually truly injured, and
Yeah.
and you are your own best coach. And so like you have to learn to know your body, and the better you know your body, the better you'll be able to assess those situations. Because like a lot of times you hear a lot of high school coaches, oh, they're faking it, or they're just trying to get a water break or this or that. And like I think sometimes that's the athlete just learning their body. because maybe they don't know what they're fully capable of yet, and they're still trying to like adjust it on the scale and figure out. And sometimes it's scary, right? Like sometimes something happens in practice and it scares you. Like, you know, maybe a knee gets tweaked, maybe an elbow gets tweaked, and it's like it's uncomfortable and it's scary when it happens in the moment. And it's like, yeah, that I'm, you know, I'm scared, I'm injured, you know, and it's like maybe not, but it's okay to like back off a little bit in the moment to make sure that you are okay, you know. And so it's like you have to learn your body so that you can know what you're capable of.
Yeah. I actually, kind of going back to like my first injury, my knee injury was in high school, and it was my LCL, and I remember it popping, and we were doing like leg laces, right? And I like asked my partner, I was like, "Did you hear that?" And he's like, he was just kind of like an awkward boy, and he's like, "What?" No. I was like, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I like was like moving around. I was like, this doesn't feel great, but I was like, I can't stop now, right? So I kept going through the whole practice, and then I like still was like, this does not feel okay. And then I got home, and I drove home, and that's when it all like stiffened up. And I was like, I totally made that so much worse. Like I couldn't bend my knee, and I was like limping into my house, and I was like, I should have stopped. So like in moments like that, like when things pop, like you should probably stop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
But like that was definitely me. Like I didn't know. That was my first major like injury, honestly. Like I never really hurt myself before then. So that's why I was like, oh, I'm fine. Like it'll be okay. So
Yeah.
definitely like what you said, like a learning, like you just gotta learn your body.
Yeah. And then that's a really great point with that, Brooke, is like you hear something pop, that's probably not a good sign. You know, maybe
Probably not.
yeah. And like I think wrestling is such a gritty sport where it's like just push through it, and there will be certain things that you can push through and that it's okay to push through, and there are going to be certain things where it's just time to get off the mat, you know. It's just time to be done for the day. And so oh my gosh, this actually makes me think of my dad. My dad was this is an injury, right? He's not an athlete anymore, right? But like he fell off the scaffolding, a 2-story scaffolding. He was building a barn, fell off the scaffolding, broke his hip. It like dislocated, and he ended up having to get a hip replacement, right? But like I heard him like fall, and I like run outside, and he's laying on the ground, and I like run over. I'm like, "Are you okay? Like just stay there, you know, lay there for a second." And he like wouldn't let me call the ambulance or anything, you know, like tough farmer guy. Finally, we get him up, we get him on his feet. He walks to the truck. He's so stubborn. He walked to the truck, right? And wouldn't let us call an ambulance, walks to the truck, and then he goes, I think I'm done working on the barn today. And I was like, you think you're done for today? I mean, geez, you know. And anyway, but it just made me think of that, where it's like, yeah, there's a time that you just need to call it, you know. But yeah. But another thing I wanted to mention about this too is like, Matea, you talked about like, you know, one more, just like almost like knowing you're done. I think a lot of it too is like the training plan. So like whatever the training plan is, like, cause I know like a lot of times like on the senior level, when you travel to camps, so like if you go do an international tournament for the women, a lot of times there's a camp attached to it. And so it'll be like a week or a 10-day long camp attached to this competition. So you went over, you cut weight, you made weight, you competed. So everything was like full, right? And then you get one day off, and usually it's your travel day. So how much rest are you truly getting in that travel day? You travel to the next location where you're going to do this 1 week or 10-day long camp. You do this 10-day long camp. Well, you're competing with a bunch of other internationals. So it's mostly live. So it's not like you're doing a whole lot of technique. There's some technique sprinkled in there, but like you're doing live almost every day. And then typically on the last day of camp, they do matches.
That's crazy.
So I remember we did this camp in Poland, and we went, it was this exact process, right? And on the last day we did matches, and I got injured, and it was the last day, the last go figure, right? And I got injured. I like kind of tweaked my hamstring, and you know, one of the reasons is that like I should have known when to stop. I should have known the situation, like match day on the last day after all of this, that's a lot, and it's probably not the best idea for myself. you know, and then on top of that, like staying up on the physical therapy. And this is where I think a lot of the athletes kind of go wrong. And it's like, okay, you have an injury, no matter what that injury is, whether it's elbow, whether it's knee, whether it's shoulder, you have an injury, maybe you have surgery, maybe you just do the physical therapy and you rehab and you come back and you're like, I'm brand new. Everything's golden. I'm 100%. I'm good to go. But what you have to realize is that injury is now a tendency. And it's an area of tendency where you could potentially get injured again. So it has to be, you know, it's sort of like paper. Like you, and maybe this isn't a good example, just the first thing that popped in my mind, but you like sort of have a little tear in the paper, right? So like the tendency for that paper to tear even further is a bigger opportunity, right? So you have to glue that paper together by doing your physical therapy. So you have to continue doing the physical therapy even when you're 100%, even when you're back to full go, even when the physical trainer, that PT, the doctor, whoever has cleared you to go 100%, you still have to stay up on that physical therapy, because this area is now an area of weakness that is now a tendency of yours. No matter how much it is back to normal, you still have to stay up on that area. So, and after 3 ACL reconstructions, I finally got the hint. So yeah, but this camp, you know, I went and I did this camp and I did not stay up on my physical therapy. And that was probably the reason that I tweaked that hamstring, is because it's like, we're doing so many other things. It's so heavy in the wrestling. We're doing so much with wrestling. I don't have time to do this. Well, you don't have time to afford not to do it.
So. That's good. That's good. I love that line right there. We should put that in the highlight.
Yeah.
Wait, I have one more thing that's kind of unrelated to what you said, Lauren, but I just want to say I really like what you said. But so my brother, he tore his ACL in football his junior year, I believe. So he couldn't wrestle his junior year, but then he came back his senior year, and it was the only year he actually made state. And what I think a lot of time, injury, as it can be perceived as something really bad, but I think it can also be a way of like tearing someone away from their identity with wrestling or with the sport that they do. And it can be like a very painful, like heart-ripping process. But I also think that it can then provide you with a different perspective of the sport. And it's almost like when I left wrestling and when I came back to wrestling, like I left it for like a year. When I came back, I had just a completely different perspective, and I was so grateful to even be out there competing, and I still am, because I know what it's like to not wrestle. And so although an injury can be a horrible thing, I think like a lot of things in life, you know, like through the hard things or through the heartbreaking things, and we can have a different perspective on like the sport or whatever it is in life. So
dude, I completely agree with you. When I tore my ACL for the 3rd time, and you have to learn to rewalk 3 times, you know.
That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
And so I remember after I was completely like rehabbed, and like, you know, I was here and I was training here and I was training over at Next Level. I remember my strength coach having me do these sprints, and like the group that I was with doing the sprints, they were not happy about doing the sprints. And I'm like crying because I'm so happy that I can still sprint. You know, after my 3rd ACL, I'm like, this is awesome. I love sprints. Like having the opportunity that I can still do that, you know? So I will agree with you on that, Matea. Like it takes your gratitude for the sport to a whole new level.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, if you're injured, good, because you're going to learn something pretty cool. You know, obviously not good, but yeah.
Well, and then along with that, I will say, like, if you don't include breaks, because you're talking about the breaks with your, like, with a concussion, if you do not incorporate breaks into your training, or like a sort of a down season or an off season, especially now, like I feel like in high school it's getting so much more and more and more competitive to where like you're training year round, and like even in college you're training year round, beyond college you're training year round, which is great, and we need to do that. But I think incorporating breaks is important, because if you do not incorporate your own break, your body will force you to take a break. And that's when those injuries happen. Like if you don't calculate that off time, you're going to have it anyways, whether you plan it or not. So
yeah. That's good. Yeah. And then when you do take that off time, you shouldn't be spending the whole time thinking about that you need to get back on the mats. Like It's fine to take time off.
Yes, absolutely. And enjoy it, and not feel bad about it. Yeah. And enjoy that this is a part of the process too. Yeah. And like a recovery day. Yes, absolutely. And I think that is like, the recovery part of it, like you just said, like I think that's huge. Like recovery, I think everyone, you know, especially in wrestling, like everyone's like, oh, the strength training is part of it, the actual wrestling's part of it, conditioning's part of it. But sometimes, and I think we're starting to learn now in the sport, that like the rest and the recovery is just as much of a part of it as the other areas. Because if you're injured, now you can't train, right? Or you have to train these other areas, right? But if we can keep healthy, and if we can keep this balance and zone in on the recovery, so you know, making sure you're getting this right amount of sleep, being hydrated, nutrition, you know, whatever the amenity is, massage, needling, like all of those things, focusing on your physical therapy, exercises, like chiropractic, like all of those things, like you zone in on those areas to like really recover the body, like that's going to help injury prevention a lot too. And it's just that's just another facet of the sport. It's just part of it.
Wow. Isn't it interesting? Sorry, Brooke, you go. You go.
No, I was just gonna. I had the nutrition and sleep down in my notes as well, just for like coming back from an injury, especially like once I was gonna tie it back into like what you said, Tay, about how with your concussion you were still like focusing on trying to make weight, and I'm not 100% sure if like that did affect like maybe you getting injured again, but I do think like when you are injured, your body needs to one like be like fully rested. So like that's your sleep, and then you need to be continuing to give your body like the nutrients. So like focusing on like the nutrition is super important, like what you said. And then obviously other things like the massages and stuff that you were saying, Lauren. But those two things I think are super real or like really important like in general, like all year round, but also especially when you are injured, you need that'll help you fully recover.
Dang, Brooke, that was a really good point. Because do you guys ever eat like, and this is a habit often, but eat like a bunch of sugar and you can feel it in your body where you're like just extremely inflamed? Can you guys feel it?
Or salt
Yeah, I can
for
feel
me
it
at
too.
least. Or like when I have like the I don't once again not often, but like when I'll have like what was it? We had like Wingstop and like I the next day my eyes and my fingers were just so puffy and I was like never
Yes,
again. I'm
dude,
not
Buffalo Wild Wings does the same thing for me too. It's like the gluten or something.
I don't know what it is, but I'm like a puffy little like
Yeah.
marshmallow
Yes.
like
Exactly. And so that's like my point too. It's like, okay, so kids who get injured and then you get injured so you don't have to make weight, let's say, and now you're just, oh my gosh, I can eat whatever I want. I can eat a bunch of junk food because I don't have to make weight and I have time off. But then I think that's actually slowing. I don't have the science behind it, but in my mind, it's pretty obvious that it would slow down recovery because of like the certain types of processed foods that cause inflammation in your body. And obviously inflammation doesn't help aid in recovery. So you know, eating healthy, probably if you want to get back on the mats, is probably like another good choice, Brooke. And then also the sleep, like so much reparation. Wait, how do you say so? Yeah, so much repair happens while you sleep too. So
yeah.
yeah.
And like if you kind of tying this into something sort of related is like when you're sick, like you oftentimes get really tired, right? And so like I know like when I'm sick, the first like day I just need to sleep. Like that's all I need. And so like that goes into like the same thing with recovery. It's a different thing, but it's still like my body's like you need to stop and you need to just sleep. And I'll sleep for like the whole day and night and then I'll be fine like the next day. But yeah.
No, keep going. I have
I don't know. That's just like one thing, like obviously like our bodies like that's just how we need to recover is just resting and recovering.
Yes. I think especially like a lot of young athletes like underestimate sleep, you know, and just like resting and like not just doing anything because they think like, oh, I'm off the mat, that's rest. And it's like, no, like actually like taking a nap or like getting the sleep that you need is like you do need that. And like Matea, you're right too, like a lot of repair happens during that time and it's so important. I know when COVID was a thing, right? Like in 2020, I guess it's still a thing, but like I got COVID like in 2020, right? And I remember like I tested positive. First of all, I didn't believe that I actually had it. And then when I finally was like, oh yeah, I actually have COVID, I was like, no way. And I like safely, right? Went for a run by myself, not around anyone, but I went for a run. I was like, no way, I don't have COVID. I'm going to sweat this thing out, you know? And so I like, but I wasn't going to like rest or sleep, you know?
That's
I'm
such
just like,
a wrestler mindset.
It is, right? And that's like what wrestlers do. Like, you're like, oh, I'm sick. I need to go work out. I need to sweat this.
Yes.
It's
Sweat
like,
it out. Go to the sauna.
yeah. And it's like, is that the best idea? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe
I
like,
think it helps a little, but
yeah, maybe go get your body moving and then come back and take a big nap, you know? But yeah, I was like, absolutely not. I refuse to be sick.
Yeah, no, I was gonna make the same point. It's like rest is like we should not take time off. Like any sleep is weak or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, but actually, not really.
Yeah.
It might actually help you. I don't know. It's just an idea.
I think it's a good idea to go sweat, and then I think it's a good idea to go back, shower, and take a good nap.
For sure. So. Because I know when I'm sometimes sick, I'll like go sauna because like I feel like everything kind of like draining out of my body, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's like detoxing my body a little bit. But that doesn't take away from you need to sleep.
Yeah. I agree with it. I like to sweat too. Yeah.
Have you guys, okay, I've gone to sauna a couple of times when I was like fevering, and I would not recommend, I do not like that because you're already hot. Like, don't do that.
Probably not.
But it like breaks the fever. Do you don't think so? No.
Okay. No.
I'm not. But wait, we all have different things.
Did you cold plunge? You should have tried to cold plunge then.
That'd be insane.
Yeah, because it's like, is that like too much stress on your body?
Try it next time.
Sure, well, hopefully I don't get sick like that. But
that's true.
Yeah.
I have another aspect of it that you brought up too, Mattea. Is like sorry, what'd you say, Brooke?
No, I don't know what she was saying.
I said knock on wood.
Oh yes.
That's what I was. Thanks, Brooke. Sorry, Lauren.
No, you're fine. We were talking about the mental side of it, you know, with the concussions and stuff, and like there is a big mental aspect of like coming back from injuries, no matter if it's concussion or knee injury or shoulder or whatever. It's funny. I was literally just talking to a coach about this, and he was telling me that he had an athlete that was just coming back from a surgery, right? And he's like, she's good. She's done the PT, blah, 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 and all this. And he's like, she just needs, his words were, she just needs to trust the surgery. And I thought that was so interesting because I asked him, I said, well, is she still doing the physical therapy? And he said, no. And I was like, okay, well, that makes sense why she doesn't trust the surgery. Like, because she actually needs to put the work in to feel secure about the progress that she's made, you know? And I fell into the trap of just believing, oh, I had the surgery, all's done, I'm 100% healed, all's back, right? But like, if you're not trusting your injury, something that is going to be helpful is to put that work in and doing that physical therapy so that you can feel and know that you're doing it. The other thing is like, you're going to have to do the things that make you feel uncomfortable. So for me, like coming back from my ACL injury, one of the things that was like a hard thing for me to do was like box jumps, you know, is like doing a box jumps after your third ACL injury. You're like, am I going to land on the box? Not to mention, unless you have those now they have the nice boxes where they're like cushy and comfy, but like, you know, if you're jumping on an old school box, like the metal
just
ones
the wood
or the wooden, I have indents in my shin. Yes. I have indents
like the metal, like,
yes, the frame.
The little yeah. I was like metal.
It's just like a metal block.
Yeah, no, not a metal block.
Like a steel.
Yeah, you've for sure seen them before, bro.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But I have indents in my shin from like missing the box, you know? And so like to try to do a box jump when you're coming back from like an ACL surgery, like that's a big jump. But like I think knowing the technique
Sorry.
No, you're good. Knowing the technique and then just like making yourself do it, like that's part of it. It is, and knowing that it's like a mental block, and maybe sometimes having a coach there to make sure that you're doing it properly is going to help build that confidence. What are you laughing at?
I'm still laughing at Brooke's face. She's laughing.
What's Brooke laughing at?
I'm just thinking about the metal box.
Oh my gosh.
And then Tay is laughing.
Look at Brooke.
I know, I'm
okay. Lauren.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lauren.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Fine. It's fine.
That's good stuff, Lauren. No.
Thanks.
Sorry.
It was.
You're in class and the teacher's like, stop laughing, and you just can't stop.
Yeah. That happens.
Yeah. Do you have anything else, Lauren, off of that?
I think I guess I think the other thing is like a lot of people push to come back too early.
Yeah.
We talked about that a little bit, but you want to be back on the mat, you want to be competing. So I feel like a lot of people push, and including like ACL protocols, and like even like you watch like NFL or pro baseball players or anything like that, and like a lot of them will have an ACL injury or some sort of big surgery injury, shoulder, whatever, and they're back in like 6 months, and it's like you can't cut that process, because like you push to come back in 6 months instead of 9 months to a year, and like what happens is you still need that time, like, and every athlete is different, and some more elite athletes can probably come back sooner, but you still need a decent amount of time, and I think people push back to come back too early, and that's when re-injuries happen too.
Yes, I agree, and I think it's almost always out of anxiety or fear that like the opponents are getting better than them, or they're falling behind, or someone's gonna, like, for me it was like, what do my coaches think? And it's like none of the right reasons to come back early.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes it's even sometimes like the protocol, right? Like there is an ACL protocol, and it's like, well, you should be hitting these time frames. And I think that's great that we have that too. But as an individual athlete, like that's like an average, right? That's an expectation. So like maybe you fall below that, maybe you fall in front of that a little bit, but like, I guess just knowing that too.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
I don't know. This is another point that I kind of forgot about, but I think it is important. And I think it also helps with like the helps with wanting to like come back soon. At least it does for me. Is like staying in the practice room. So like even when you are like injured and you can't wrestle, still being there, still being with like the team, still watching technique, you'd be surprised on like how much you still get out of that. And like how much easier it is then to like come back to practice.
yeah.
And like obviously like take the time to like do other things as well. I think like injuries do give you that opportunity to like not be fully like, so like what you were saying, Taya, like not like having like wrestling as your identity. But I do think like if you want to, like that doesn't hurt, just being in the room.
I agree with you, Brooke, and I would add on to that and say, when you do come back, then it being no matter what the injury is, right? Even if it's like a finger, if you're just out for a week, or 2 weeks, or if it's an ankle, out for 2 weeks, whatever it is, or if you're out for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, whatever your comeback is, I would say progressive training. So like a gradual increase in your intensity, duration, whatever the workout is, a gradual increase in over time versus an extreme, sometimes wrestling approach, like all at once. And I know I was like guilty of that. Like, like in college, right? You go home for like Christmas break, or you go home for like summer break or whatever, and you're still training, but it's not the same as like when you're in season, right? And then I would get back to school and I'd try to go 100% all back in at it, Or I was also guilty of this, again, going on like wrestling trips, like where I'm like at training camp or something, and then I come back and I would try to get back into my normal lift schedule. Maybe my lifting got off, and it was only, my lift schedule was only off for like a week or two, but I would try to come back and jump right back into the same weights, the same sets, the same, heavy lift that I was doing when I left. And it's like, no, you built up to that over time. You left and we're only gone for a week or two. You still have to start down here and work back up to that. You can't start where you left off. Yeah. Because that's how, that's how you like overextend your body. And so it's like, really, if you want to perform at your optimum, at maximum capacity, you have to start a little bit lower and increase. It's okay to leave the weight room, the wrestling room, not fully exhausted. I think sometimes in wrestling, we get into those extreme modes, like where it's all or nothing, whether it's our nutrition or whether it's the way that we train. So like remembering that sometimes when you're starting back, less is more. It's okay to want to keep going. I that was one of the things I learned with my wrestling too, with the going live, when I started training at this new location here. When I first started going, I was like, it felt like it wasn't enough live, and it's like, it made me like crave wrestling, crave like the live part of it, it's because it's like, oh wait, I just want to do one more, and it's like I would leave like that, and I was like, and it was good because it left that little bit of like hunger in you, whereas in times past, like I would leave like just crushed, like I don't even know if I left practice so many times where I went home and I couldn't eat dinner. I was so tired that like I couldn't even eat dinner. I was like, I'm not even hungry. Like the thought of food is just not gonna happen. So like that's a big difference, So whenever you're starting to come back, it's okay to start slow and slowly increase your intensity, your weights, whatever it is.
That's good, Lauren. I like that point.
I agree.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything else on this topic? I feel like it was a good one.
I feel like we covered a lot.
There was so much.
Seriously, that was good. I mean, I learned so much from both of you, so.
Yeah.
Oh, Brooke, I have one point off of yours. Sorry, I don't know why I yelled. When you said being in the wrestling room, I would say yes, unless you're concussed, because the loud noises.
Yeah. I guess it depends on what injury, yeah.
That's fair, yeah.
I feel like it's
always different, but.
Yeah, but most injuries you can, like maybe airdyne bike or watch or stretch or do PT or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think even the camaraderie you get out of that too.
Yeah.
Like
and being around people.
Yeah.
That's just important. Like we're just like as human beings, we need like to be around people. And I feel like I don't know, at least for me, a lot of my social time does come from like my practices and like seeing people. And so that's one other thing is like I remember like just sitting in my room when I was in like high school and just being like, what am I doing? Like that's probably what like led to me being like sad, and like you're just like with you, I don't know, in your head and stuff like that, and you're injured and you don't know what to do. So that's why like going to practices and just like seeing the coach, talking to your teammates, it's just like it'll help you.
Absolutely.
That's true.
Cool.
Whoa. All right. Well, I think that's a good podcast. I think we should end it there. We're an hour and 15 in, or hour and 16
That's the longest one.
Yeah, it is. I'm proud of that.
Yeah. Long story short, do your physical therapy.
Yes. Don't get too down on yourself if you're injured.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll see you guys next week.